Hello and welcome to Apex Instant Tips, episode number 128. I'm your host, Anton, and we have with us today a special guest, Hayden. Welcome, Hayden.
Great to see you, Anton. It looks like you're in a different office today.
I am. I don't even have to send my mom a letter about the show today because I'm right here in her house. I should have invited her as a special guest today, but
Absolutely, you should invite her on.
I neglect. She's famous on the show, I'm sure. But yes, I'm at my mom's house today, which means today's tip is going to be a little bit cramped because I usually have 3 monitors. I can see you, I can see comments and so forth. But today I got
cramped in terms of screen space, but not cramped in terms of time because it's not going to be a short tip.
No, it is not. This is Apex, not so fast tip day today.
So we're going to give you 10 minutes, Anton, to walk through something that is a bit of a primer on how Apex sessions work. Is that what we're going to do?
Yeah, Apex sessions work in the context of generating links that you could potentially send via an email or something like that. But yeah, it is a lot about how Apex sessions work, as it turns out. And even with that 10 minutes, I'm going to claim a little time before we even switch over to talking specifically about the tip to talk about session rejoin. In particular. So my first question for you, Hayden, is you've probably noticed that in the URL of your Apex applications, you got the session ID.
That's right.
And so my bank doesn't carry a session ID in it. It doesn't require me to have a session ID. If they send me a link, and I click on that link, I don't have a session ID. If I'm already logged in, I click on the link, I keep going. But with Apex, if you don't have that session ID, if you don't have the right session ID and you're already logged in, it's going to force you to do it again. Why does Apex have that session ID in the URL?
Yeah, it's something that I've often wondered about. It's surely my bank doesn't have lower security than my Apex workspace.
Yeah, crazy. Well, and you keyed in on it exactly. It's your Apex workspace, because on apex.oracle.com, you have a workspace. I have a workspace. At least 2 or 3 other people have workspaces on apex.oracle.com. In fact, I think I saw something like 100,000 workspaces or something on apex.oracle.com. And because of that, that's why you need that session ID in the URL. Because if I convinced you, hey, Hayden, go take a look at this application that I wrote on apex.oracle.com, and you navigated to it, what cookies would get sent to my application?
My cookies.
All of your cookies, right?
Yeah,
including.
So if you mean that you could essentially impersonate me in the application that you sent me.
Right. I could impersonate you in the application that you're running in your workspace. And if you happen to be logged into the builder and the builder didn't require that session, I could become you in the builder, right? So it is really critical on this shared URL kind of environment that you have that session ID in the URL, because I don't just need the cookie, I also need something that's in the URL. Right. And your bank, of course, whether you're using USAA or Citizens, whatever it might be, they have full control of that URL. They don't have some rogue actor.
My bank doesn't have to solve for the problem of my bank impersonating me.
Right.
So yeah, that checks out. Right. And of course, as you alluded to, Anton, it is actually possible to turn off in my application the requirement to have a session ID in the URL.
That's right, and we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that first, and we'll start the clock essentially now, and we'll take a look at that. And so the goal of today is to be able to send links via email with 2 requirements. One, when they click on the link, if they're already logged into the Apex application, it doesn't make them log in again, because you've experienced this, I'm sure. You log into the Apex app, you click on a link, it opens a new tab to your Apex application, it makes you log in again, and what happens to your first tab where you're already logged in?
It kills my session.
Kills your session, right? And then what happens if you go back to that page and you try to do something in it? It kills that session, but then it also kills your other session. So back and forth with these multiple tabs, it's terrible. So the first thing we want to do is enable session rejoin if you can in your environment. So that is, and I don't even know, am I sharing my screen?
You are, and you have not yet started your timer.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to start my timer right now. So the first thing you want to do, if you can, is enabled for all sessions. Set your
something that I cannot do on apex.oracle.com on my free workspace.
That's right. So on apex.oracle.com, you and any shared URL environment with Apex, you shouldn't be able to do this. You won't be able to send a link that they click on and they don't have to log in again. They're going to have to. But the other aspect is deep linking. And if you want to be able to deep link, you do need to set enabled to true on deep linking. And there's a little bit of a trick in there that you can bypass it a little bit, but I'm not going to get into all that. But so we're going to set both enabled for all sessions if you can, and deep linking enabled. And if you can't do this, you're still going to have to log in. So the next thing is to take a look at. So let's say I want to deep link to this page right here.
So the fact that you have enabled session rejoin is why you don't have a session ID in that URL.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So you can see no session ID because I enabled session rejoin. Yes, perfect. So if I grab this URL and I open up, say, Firefox instead, and I go here, it's going to make me log in because I haven't logged in already. So that's fine. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and log in, but I am going to get deep linked right to here. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah.
Perfect.
Deep linking, such a useful feature. I think the security trade-offs are pretty minimal.
Right. So now what about here? Now what if I want to go to this page, page 5, and you can see here, it's got this checksum, right?
I don't see a problem. Just share the URL and
so just grab this link,
enabled.
Come back over here. There's no session ID. Pop this in here. Right. So incorrect or missing checksum. So the problem is now we have to understand checksums. Well, we have a few options here. The first thing we could do is we could go to this ID item here, and we could say, okay, no checksum required at all.
Yep.
Okay. So if we do that and we come here and we make this one, you'd have to do this at the page level as well, because the page, you can also say arguments. So we'd have to unrestrict both of these. Okay. So if I do that, problem solved almost, except, and this is something I do not agree with Apex. If you do that and you click here, it will put that session ID back in here, and it is going to require a session ID here. So it will allow me to deep link.
Easy solution here. We need something.
It will allow me to deep link, but I'll have to log in again. If I take this URL, even with or without the session ID, it doesn't matter, and I pop it over here, it's going to make me deep link. It's going to make me log in again, which I don't want to have to do. So
unless I guess you could make the page public, perhaps, with that.
Right, exactly. I can make this page public that I can edit people, and then I don't have to. You're right, absolutely. But that is far outside.
That's one step too far. Okay,
one step too far.
So okay. There's some security settings that you can't bypass. So you need to turn.
I'm going to put that back on. I'm going to put this back on. Okay. But the next thing we need to do is we can say, okay, it's not going to be unrestricted, but we can jump to this. Instead of saying session level, we can choose user or application level. Okay.
And it looks like there's quite a bit of help there.
There is. And so I'm going to do this, and we're going to see the application level. I'm going to do it at application level. This item can be set by passing the item in a URL that includes a checksum specific to the workspace and application. Seems pretty basic. Okay. So here we go. I've got my.
So it's the next least restrictive option.
Right. Well, it's next most. I don't know, but it's application level as opposed to user or session. Right. Okay. Right. So now, if I come back here, I'm using this query, Apex page get URL, in my page itself to generate this URL. So if I'm in this application and I do this, I've got this URL. So now that it's at the application level, if I come over here and I pop it in, sorry, I did not. I've got to make sure I keep all of this stuff. Web apps dev. Web apps dev. I need to get rid of that. I don't have the. Okay. So now, oh, it made me log in again, but it let me go in here. And that's because this is being generated within the context of a session.
Okay.
So what I need to be able to do is do this without the context of a session. I need to actually pass in a null session ID so that I get the there. So if I were to change my query and instead of using Apex page URL, if instead I passed in p session and I set it to null, I would actually get something that works.
So in the page, are you passing in a p session implicitly, or are you?
It's implicitly, yeah, it is.
What if you hard code p session null in the page?
Right, then it would work. Then it would work if I hard coded it. Okay, but of course, I'm not likely to be doing this in the Apex application. I'm probably doing this through some sort of job or automation or something else. So I might want to be able to do this through SQL Plus, right, and get this URL. So if I come to SQL Workshop and I run this, look at this now. This is really interesting. Okay. You can see I've got Smart URL, right? But I don't even. Yeah, it's not even from the URL. So now there's something's really strange. If I go to SQL Developer and I run the exact same thing, logged in as the same schema in SQL Developer, I get this. I don't even get the checksum. It's crazy, right? And if you are not watching this show and you're trying to figure this out, what is going on? I'm running the exact same query. I'm running this query in SQL Workshop. I'm running it over here. I get a session URL, but the checksum doesn't work. It's friendly. Over here, I get none of the above. Okay. Well,
is there perhaps a clue in the help?
There is, right here. It's specific to the workspace and application. Okay. Here's the thing. SQL Workshop is not in this workspace. SQL Workshop is in the Apex workspace. Over here, I haven't even set my workspace ID. If I simply go over here, I'm just going to run this right here. I'm going to just get my workspace ID from Apex Workspaces, and then I'm going to set the security group ID. So I'm going to run that right here. And then suddenly, check this out. Boom. Now I get my URL.
It's like a full URL. That's great.
And that's the other thing. It's even crazy here because now I'm getting the full URL, whereas over here, when I run the page, I only get a portion of the URL. It's crazy. And so now let's paste this in. Boom, it works just fine. If I put in a different number, this one right here has got number 2. I can come over to my SQL Developer. If instead I put in a 2 here, I'm going to get a working checksum. Boom. Okay. Now I get the other one. Great. This is so good.
So depending on whether you run it from an automation or like a database job, you might get a different URL.
That's exactly right. You might, if you're inside the application versus if you're inside an automation versus if you're just in a DBMS job, you're either going to get the host name as part of it or you're not going to. So you need to really test and understand where you are to know what you're getting as far as all of this goes.
And the same goes, of course, for Apex util prepare URL.
Exactly. Identical. They give you the same results. One of them calls the other, I suspect.
Got it.
So, okay. One more thing here. Okay. So let's just say that this is all great for these because any user can go to any of these. But what if I have this other page right here, page 6? Page 6 lets me edit my profile. Okay. Now, I don't want another user to be able to get this URL and edit it, right? I want this one to be specific to the person. So let's say I want to send out an email to everyone in the company that says, please go out and update your profile. And I want to give a link right to here.
Yeah. You could, of course, have a process on the back end that makes sure that whoever is editing is the person who owns the record. But if you just wanted to restrict it at the URL level.
Right. And I think you're right. I think I would at least do the authorization scheme as well. But I think it's a good idea, right? So let's go right here. Here, what we could do is we could set this to, instead of session level, we could just set it to user level. Okay. But
so
now
setting the workspace isn't enough.
Exactly right. It's not enough to set the workspace. So what I can do instead, I can actually set the session. I can create a session on the fly for this application and this user. So I get my workspace ID, I set my workspace ID, and then I create a session for this user. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. I've created a session. If we look, I have an Apex session. Okay. And now if I come over here and I do this, I'm going to do page 6 now. So now I'm getting this. And so this is specific to this user. If I come here and pop it in, it should take me to page 6. Voila, I've done it. I'm on page 6. That was a 10-minute tip, Hayden. Right in the money.
Well worth it. I think revisiting fundamentals like this is so fascinating.
And I'm going to just spend 10 seconds more to say you can actually, and it's stupid, don't do it, but you can actually do it all the way to the session level, because what you could do is you could actually find the person's, if they have an active session, you could find out they have an active session. You can attach to their active session and then get the link. Of course, in my case, I have 2 active sessions, one in Firefox and one in Chrome. So I wouldn't know which one I'm in. So it's ridiculous, but you could do it.
If you choose the session at the session level, you're clearly intending to not share the link.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this is silly, but this one I think is really truly valuable. You might want to do this. So what you would do is, for each user that you're sending it to, you would create a session, you would create the URL, send out the email, and then don't forget to delete that session. I mean, it's not a big deal, but eventually Apex will go through and clean it up. But that will get you a user-specific checksum.
Yeah. So not everyone will be able to follow this advice depending on the workspace administration security settings. But if you are able to enable rejoin sessions, this is really powerful.
Yes. And even if you can't enable rejoin sessions, at least you can get deep linking working. The problem, of course, is if they're already logged in, they're going to get squashed out of their other session. And it's just so ugly. And I think most of us are working in environments that don't have some sort of shared thing where you have to worry about somebody else nabbing your cookie.
It's a pretty restrictive problem.
Yeah. It's apex.oracle.com is the most common example of it being a problem.
Right.
All right. Well, that was a 10-minute tip. I do have a little other sort of sideline, thing. But if you came in just for the tip, you've already been here too long. So do all those things. Hey, Mom, don't forget about the show. But I have another little, just a little funny thing. So yesterday's XKCD is about the International Dateline. And I don't know if I'm sharing my screen or not now, but I am. Good. So I'll let people read this on their own. But yesterday's XKCD was funny, but it also reminded me that we did have a time, it's not time zone change. We had a change a week ago or so. We changed from Eastern Daylight Time to Eastern Standard Time. Yes. And don't you know, we had an Apex automation. So it was an Apex automation that was set to run every Monday at 9 a.m.
Okay.
And that Monday, the following Monday, it ran twice.
But daylight savings time changed on Sunday.
On Sunday, right? So it was bedeviling to try and figure out, why did this thing run twice? And here's the reason. We've talked about this before with time zones. Apex itself sets your underlying time zone to an offset, not to a time zone. So when the person created the automation and said, run weekly Monday at 9 a.m., Monday at 9 a.m., it stored it as weekly Monday, 9 a.m. with an offset of -4. Okay, so the next week happened, but 9 a.m. with an offset of -4 was actually 8 a.m. So it ran at 8 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. because it calculated with a -4 offset. And then the engine says, okay, run the next Monday at 9 a.m. the next Monday at 9 a.m.
Wow.
was 59 minutes later, right? So it scheduled it again for Monday at 9 a.m. with an offset of 05 this time, right? And so it ran with an offset of 05.
Yeah. So I mean, that's clearly a bug.
Yeah, it's a bug, but it's, you know, it's a bug in the way the time zone was calculated. If you explicitly stated the time zone, you'd be better off. Or if you just use Zulu or something. But it does just tell us how crazy our time zones are, our offsets versus our time zone names versus our daylight savings time and all this. I mean, wow. I guess nobody wants to be having breakfast at 2 a.m. But it's weird. Well, that's it. I suppose if you came just for no, that's everything. Anything from you?
Yeah. So everyone have a good weekend.
Yeah, excellent. Tell your mom about the show. Bye-bye.